Welcome to another episode of the Jay and Rob Toy Show. I'm your host, Rob McCallum, and this is going to be a back and forth discussion, if there ever was one. And of course, to have a discussion, you need to have two people. So allow me to bring in my co-host, my collaborator, the other brother from Krypton, the Superman to my Spider-Man, maybe? Mr. Jay Bartlett.
I'll take it. I'll take either one of those. That's fine with me.
Are you ready to talk the mother of all toy discussions?
I'm ready. This is going to be very, very difficult. I hope you don't make me choose, but something tells me you're going to make me choose.
Well, ladies and gentlemen, we have to remove the veil of secrecy because the mother of all toy discussions isn't about Star Wars, in fact. It actually is about superheroes, and you've got to pick a side, Marvel or DC. There's been lots of lines out there, lots of iterations, lots of releases, and lots of dollies to choose from. So we're going to go down that path. And Jay, yes, I'm going to ask you off the cuff, just from your gut, which line of superheroes had the better figures?
Marvel, hands down. Now, if we're talking about Marvel versus DC as a whole, that's a little different, but
That's what we're talking
specifically
about.
But specifically toy-wise, Marvel, there's no question.
Well, we are going to find out if that's where you end by the time our discussion concludes, my friend. It's not as easy as I thought, and when I started doing research on this, my wallet was heating up with all the little cool discoveries I was finding. So let's talk toy lines. Let's start at the beginning, of course. You and I both love the Migos World's Greatest Heroes line, where both DC and Marvel were represented.
Fantastic, isn't it? That line is wicked. I have a bunch in my own collection. I had a bunch when I was a kid. The dogs ate them. I've reacquired them. It's great.
And it is the last time that both licenses were held by one company, because after Mego, everything gets split up and it literally becomes a head-to-head competition. We see, of course, Mattel taking Secret Wars and those Marvel characters going up against Kenner's Superpowers. And then we see Toy Biz take the Marvel license after losing the DC license briefly after the Batman movie, and then Kenner taking the DC license with their Batman line. Between those two eras, the 80s and the early 90s, where do you think the winner, ends up?
Secret Wars is really interesting. Let's start with that. It's a wonderful story, but they never made the Beyonder. Also, the articulation was very Kenner Star Wars. The paint, we've talked about many times, is terrible. So they have little paint decos, Wolverine, Magneto, and if you just, hold it too tight, you rub that right off. The circuits on Dr. Doom's chest rub off very quickly. Great characters in the line, but it was very difficult to play with the red Spider-Man because all the lines would come off. You had to be very careful.
Let me jump in there right now, Jay. Let's not forget the obscure vehicles that we got for Secret Wars. You had Captain America and Dr. Doom's basically, cycles, like these motorcycle things. We never saw those before. That was a weird choice to get those. And of their mirror images of one another. And the Tower of Doom playset. Again, really strange choices. Doesn't really resemble anything from what we had come to know these characters by, but they're part of the line. Odd choices.
The Tower of Doom playset doesn't resemble Dr. Doom's castle in Secret Wars at all. But, I gotta give them props for making a playset. The shield gimmick, with the 3D image that would go back and forth. I mean, that really only ever made sense for Captain America to have a shield anyway, so I could give or take that. You also had a lot of real fragile parts like Doc Ock's forearms. Most examples of that figure, now the arms are long broken off. They're just held on with these little tiny pegs. Most of them are busted.
Now, of course, we can't talk Secret Wars with jumping to Superpowers, which seemingly did everything else better. The articulation was better, the paint apps were better, the accessories were better, even the vehicles were better, despite some odd vehicle choices like we've talked about with the Justice Jogger, the Superman plane. We don't need that stuff, but the Batmobile was great, the Batcopter was great. Clearly, DC wins that one hands down.
Oh, hands down, man. When you hold a Superpowers figure and you hold a Secret Wars figure, you can just the texture is different. The Kenner Superpowers just feels more durable. The paint doesn't rub off. It takes a lot to rub the paint off on a Superpowers figure, and they're just so vibrant looking. The colors just pop. They actually look like they've leapt off the comic book page.
Now, Toy Biz got the DC license for a brief time in the late 80s, of course, doing all the Batman 89 movie figures, and then some DC superheroes as well with the same kind of packaging, notably Mr. Freeze, the Penguin, Superman, Lex Luthor, which is the infamous punching the face Lex Luthor, and Wonder Woman as well. Not a ton of characters, but Toy Biz put those out before losing that license and Kenner picking it up, and then Toy Biz switched to doing the Marvel characters. Now, Kenner had a huge line of Batman stuff, and I know you don't like the underwater, deep sea, Arctic firefighting, Power Blade Batman stuff. I don't like it either, but the success of that line with Wayne Manor as a playset, all the different cars and vehicles and gadgets that Batman got, and fueled by the Batman the Animated Series show, really showed how powerful that line could be with just Batman on its own.
For sure. Now, you said a lot there. Let's jump back, if we can, a little bit to the Toy Biz Batman stuff. Now, I know you're a huge fan of that line. I'm not. Nostalgia-wise, I am, because of what that film means to me and you. The Tim Burton Batman is just a work of art. The toys, not so much. I remember, again, getting a little bit too old to play with toys. I still did. I remember looking at those toys and looking at my old superpowers in a bin in the basement. I'm like, these superpower figures are way better. Even though the Batman was blue and gray, the classic kind of Batman, I still preferred him to the Michael Keaton one. There was just something about those figures, they felt really cheap to me.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. The superpower stuff was better than the Toy Biz DC heroes. But Toy Biz got a lot better in a real short amount of time when they started putting out those X-Men figures.
The X-Men and just the Marvel figures in general were great. Spider-Man, Hulk, and then the X-Men, we got Wolverine with retracting claws. His mask was removable. That was killer. I remember that Wolverine figure. That was really exciting to get. I was huge into him at the time. And then you got all the obscure guys. You got Strife, you got Sauron, you got Forge. I mean, you never thought that they were ever going to make a Forge figure, and they did. It was great. It was a great time to be a comic book and a toy collector.
What's really interesting, I talked about how Kenner took the Batman license and really went to town with it, right? They really focused on Batman, and they did everything under the Batman umbrella, focused. But Toy Biz took the opposite approach, and we said, we're going to take Marvel and do everything that's Marvel and anything that's Marvel. So they could have just done like Spider-Man, or they could have just done X-Men or anything X, including X-Force or Excalibur. But they did everything from the staple characters, like you said, Captain America and Punisher and Hulk and all the X-Men stuff. And they just kept going and going and going. And both companies had a lot of success. Kenner crushed it for many years, riding the wave of both the animated series, like I said, and the live-action movies that were coming out for Batman through the 90s. And Toy Biz just kept going and going and going with wave after wave. I think there was something like 4 or 5 different Wolverines. And I remember getting the second version of Wolverine when he was blue and yellow. That was a game changer to me because he had way different kind of articulation. You could really fight with him that you couldn't do in a way with that original, because he had like one stiff arm this way and one arm this way, so his claws never matched, and he always lost the mask.
The Toy Biz really did take the Kenner Star Wars approach to releasing everything. And although I was only collecting a few here or there because of age and whatnot, I do remember it did start to get a little crazy. The second version of Cable, remember he had a bubble on his head? And I was like, okay, what's going on? Do we need 2 versions of Cable? And it just really got diluted really quickly. I remember that.
And then Toy Biz does something that's really interesting, Jay. They really swung the pendulum back the other way. Instead of diluting everything and picking any possible character under the license umbrella of Marvel, they start to focus on Spider-Man. And they do a line called Spider-Man Classics. Now, again, a genius move, because it's just like what Kenner had been doing with Batman, focusing on anything and everything that was Batman, villains, gadgets, characters, playsets. So now Toy Biz is going back the other way. But now these things, because it's the late 90s, are more articulated. The sculpts are better, the details are better, and they run with Spider-Man Classics for a while, which eventually become Marvel Legends.
Yeah, so now you're getting into Marvel Legends, and of course, Everyone knows what that brand is now. It's been going on for, geez, over 15 years now.
Yeah, it's one of the mainstays of action figure collecting, and it didn't always rest with Hasbro like it does today. It feels like Hasbro's had it forever, but Toy Biz had it for a good 4 or 5 years, and it ended in the mid-2000s, and then people thought, oh, what? These legends are gone? I've been collecting them for a while, and of course collecting the Spider-Man classics, which are just like them. And then Hasbro took the license, and everybody thought, okay, well, what's gonna happen? Because Hasbro had Kenner already at that point, and Kenner had always done good Star Wars stuff under the umbrella of Hasbro. So what was gonna happen to Marvel? Well, Star Wars had 3.75-inch figures, so Hasbro introduced 3.75-inch Marvel characters under the new brand, Marvel Universe. And this was a brand, Jay, that I remember you specifically went nuts for, and I was just like, this is incredible.
I had, geez, I don't have many now. I have Silver Surfer left from the Galactus set. He actually came with the, I think Galactus was about 12 inches, not nearly to scale, but it was still pretty cool. I still have that one, and there's, you know, Spider-Man, Symbiote Spider-Man. There was a lot of cool stuff, and it says a lot about Marvel when you're drawing me in to buy the action figures, when at the time I wasn't reading any comic books from Marvel. I mean, that's pretty powerful stuff there.
Yeah, it speaks to the design of the characters, and at 3 3/4 inches, the 3.75, the G.I. Joe scale, you're thinking, okay, well, what more can you get out of it? We had seen Secret Wars at that scale. Superpowers were a little bigger at around 4 and 4 and a little bit higher, 4 1/4. So is it gonna be the same thing? Well, technology had changed and the sculpts were way better. Computer technology was being used, and these characters never looked alive like they did with that Marvel Universe run.
Hello everyone, my name is Justice Curry and this is my toy room. All right, I know it's a lot to take in. So let's start where I spend most of my time, right here. So this is kind of my little command station where I have my PC where I'm editing videos or taking photographs and uploading them to social media. So the chaos that you see all around is kind of how my brain works. I like colorful, I like unorganized, and saving little trinkets and pieces from my childhood and things that I thought looked really neat. So a little bit of everything. Behind me is my wall of mint on card figures, or MOCs. This is all G.I. Joe from 1983 to 1989, and a lot of my best favorite figures and fond memories that I have looking in the toy aisle and seeing them and the excitement before we ripped them open. Obviously they're quite rare because no one's kept them in package. So they made them by the millions, but there's probably only a small few left that are on the face of the planet. So I'm really lucky to have this unique collage of artwork. It's artwork. Behind me is box art, He-Man, modern He-Man, Merman, things that I kind of pick up throughout the times, like a Mexican bootleg translucent alien queen being ridden by a predator here with some wacky light that's going on. This is an old Nintendo cabinet for original NES that video games would be displayed in here. Luckily someone saved it from the dumpster, and now I get to put a few of my favorite things inside. From Muscle Man to G.I. Joes, the He-Man original cartoon cells, to pre-production G.I. Joe like the Crocmaster in here, to Aliens, all sorts of the foreign G.I. Joe. I love that. It's the collecting arc. You pick up what you like first, which it was mass produced in the US and other countries, but some of the other countries had lower production numbers, like Venezuela, Argentina, India. And when you try to hunt for those lower production numbers, it's quite rare and it takes you a while to find them. So as I find them, I put them in a place of honor in my case, if you will. One of my very favorites in my entire collection is this store display from Child World that kids would have seen that while they were shopping, similar to a Toys R Us. Child World was on the east side of the nation, or the United States, and children saw this in the toy aisle. It's very special. A shelf filled with Ninja Turtles vintage. I got one modern Krang in there, but Ninja Turtles were an important part of my childhood. I loved the cartoon, the trading cards, the action figures. I actually wanted to be a Ninja Turtle when I grew up. And I'd be like, please, just Lord, make me a Ninja Turtle. Moving down, some more modern type figures, some heroes or anti-heroes that I enjoy fighting off some various bad guys, from predators to aliens to what have you, but Snake Plissken or Arnold Schwarzenegger from Predator, RoboCop, and then of course Samurai Boba Fett. You gotta have Samurai Boba Fett. And down here, just other ones that I just had to find a spot in my collection to put, such as Dino Riders, Deadpool. Everyone's got to have a Deadpool in their collection. To a really fun, unique piece of pottery, one of a kind. An amazing customizer made the tomb of He-Man. Yes, this is clay put in a kiln, and you can open up the tomb and find He-Man's bones. You even got some little artwork outside with Hordak and the battle axe.
But you might be wondering what was going on with DC. We hadn't talked about DC since the Kenner stuff from the 90s. What have they been doing while Marvel Legends was rolling out and Marvel Universe comes and then becomes, Marvel Legends again? What was DC doing? Do you remember what was happening with DC figures in the early to mid 2000s?
I have a feeling you're about to enlighten me, so do so please, my friend.
Well, there's a little company called Four Horsemen Toy Design. You may have heard them. They may have done a lot of figures in your collection. They've done a lot of figures in mine. And this is where I alluded to at the beginning. This topic is going to cost me a ton of fortune, because as I was researching, I don't know how I missed out on this, because there's a line called DC Universe Classics. Yes, Jay, the word classic should tell you everything you need to know. This is a 6-inch scale, very deep line of every possible DC character you can imagine, done with the sculpt, articulation, and detail of the Four Horsemen. And I'll tell you this, those figures that come out for DC Universe Classics, Jay, they are 75% inspired by superpowers and 15% inspired by comic stuff, with just the Four Horsemen toy design essence on top. So it is literally the perfect blend for you and I, since we love superpowers so much and the Horsemen.
You brought it right back to me, because I remember buying a ton of these at the time we were playing the game HeroClix, both Marvel and DC, and I remember that kind of sparked all our interest in the superhero stuff again. Although we weren't reading the comics, I remember going out to Heroes and getting a bunch of these. I do remember now, yes.
Yeah, so these were put out by Mattel. They had well over 20 different waves. They had the Collect and Connect figures out there. They even had the Masters of the Universe 2-packs, where you would get like He-Man versus Superman, inspired by the original comic. You'd have She-Ra versus Supergirl, Lex Luthor versus Skeletor, which were like all Toys R Us exclusives for a while. And the figures just look amazing.
Very cool. And you know what? I hate to say it, when we stopped playing HeroClix, I remember that collection just went bye-bye, unfortunately. All those DC figures, I didn't open any of them. I remember they were on the wall. They were fantastic, but again, you only have so much room, you only have so much time and money, right?
It's been tough to kind of pick and choose over the years where your collection goes and where it stays, especially with so many different superhero figures, because they're always coming out. That license gets transferred over and over again, and everybody's going to put out their version of Superman, Batman, Wonder Woman, and so on. So while Marvel kept going with Hasbro and the Marvel Legends continue to roll out still to this day, DC has bounced around a little, and recently they found a home with McFarlane, which, as you know, is a great home for the adult collector. What do you think about the McFarlane figures?
Well, they're sweet. I think it's the answer to Marvel's Marvel Legend figures, obviously. I have about 5. I have Red Hood, a couple different Batmans, a couple different Supermans. Again, the problem is you're up to that 6-7 inch scale with some of the DC heroes, and $29, $32 Canadian. It's a lot of money. It's a lot of money, and there's deluxe ones that are $40, $50 too. You know, there's a Batman with a bike and all this stuff. And what's cool about these figures, forget price for now. What's cool about the figures is they follow certain storylines from 70s, 80s, 90s, and a lot of the DC stuff I haven't read, so a lot of the characters I don't know. That's another reason I might shy away from them. Who knows?
Well, Jay, it all kind of comes down to this, to try to pick a winner or which line or brand that we think has fared better when it comes to Marvel figures or DC figures. There's been up and down points kind of across the board. For me, though, it kind of comes down to, on the DC side, looking at superpowers, DC Universe Classics from Mattel, and then looking at with the stuff that McFarlane's doing now versus Secret Wars, the Toy Biz 90s stuff, and predominantly Marvel Legends. You said Marvel at the beginning. Is that still the case?
Oh, absolutely. You could just do Marvel Legends for me, and it would be a clear winner. The Marvel Legends line is so fantastic, and it has something for absolutely everybody. The Build-A-Figure option that they have almost since the beginning is brilliant. So if you're a completist, you're getting another giant figure for free. You can't really compete. At that point, I would say it's whether you prefer DC heroes or Marvel heroes. That's almost what it comes down to.
Well, Jay, there's that superpower cosmic clashing sound that tells us it's time for Action Figure Spotlight. Now, you could pick a character from Marvel, you could pick it from DC, and it could be from any iteration that we've discussed, or maybe one that we haven't discussed. So what's it gonna be, my friend? What are you showcasing for us this week?
So my journey with Marvel and DC has spanned over 40 years easily, as yours has. I've had my ups and downs with both companies, and I've had favorite superheroes come and go. Recently, the last 3 or 4 years, I've gravitated towards a superhero that was one of my favorites as a kid, and now he's my, without a doubt, absolute favorite, and that would be Daredevil from Marvel Legends, specifically the Netflix show with Charlie Cox, who I think portrays that character absolutely perfect. This is such a great likeness to Charlie, and as you can see, he comes with the Billy Club, exchangeable hands, Man-Thing is the Build-A-Figure, which he's actually not too intrusive, it's just his head, so it only takes up a little bit of the window there, it's not in the center. But I love the Netflix Daredevil show and the comic book as well. He's my favorite superhero, and this is my favorite version of Daredevil.
It's interesting because you touched on another point, and that would be, you know, which toy line and toy designers get the likeness most right, because when we think superheroes, we're thinking comics first and foremost, but now that there's so many TV shows and so many movies out there, you've got to go photorealistic, and, you know, Marvel is certainly outpacing DC on the photorealistic real-life live-action offerings.
It's really funny, right? Because when the Marvel Cinematic Universe started in 2009, with Iron Man, it was weird for me to see all these people and you identified them as Captain America and Iron Man, because I'm used to, for the most part, comic book versions. Now, when I read Daredevil books and I don't see Charlie Cox, it's a little strange to me. So it's funny how that kind of flip-flopped on me.
Now, I'm not skirting the rules when I say 2 characters. It just happens to be a 2-pack. And as I was doing the research for this episode, man, I just couldn't resist the Marvel Universe line, in particular this 2-pack with Thanos and Adam Warlock. And what's particularly awesome about Warlock for you and I is that he's got the Infinity Gauntlet on his hand here, which just makes this iteration of the character so cool for you and I, since we love the Infinity Stone saga. This comes out later in the Marvel Universe toy line when they were doing kind of greatest battles, and there's even a comic book pack in with it. Loose, these figures are almost as much as getting them together, and I had the chance to get it on card, so why not? On the back, you can see kind of the diorama with all the different Infinity Gauntlet artwork, and then showcasing some of the other 2-packs that are available. Again, just really cool line, probably underappreciated in the shadow in the wake of everything that's happening with Marvel Legends, but this line is still so heavily collected that getting the figures on card or loose rivals price of new Legends figures today, because probably the scale is easier to collect and the articulation is good and the details and paint apps are just phenomenal.
And you know what's funny about that is that Hasbro usually caters to everybody. So G.I. Joe currently you have a 6-inch and a 3-inch. Star Wars 6 and 3. I would really like to see the Marvel Universe line continue because I think there's a market for the 3.75s, definitely.
That'll do it for another episode of the Jay and Rob Toy Show. Jay, we're gonna do something called the lightning round, and you've got to pick either or from a series of options. Are you ready to play, my friend?
Okay, let's do it, and I'm praying I get them right this time.
Well, we'll see if you do. All right, first up, Batman or Spider-Man?
Spider-Man.
Venom or Joker?
Oh, Joker.
Red Skull or Lex Luthor?
Lex Luthor. Batmobile
or Silver Surfer Surfboard?
Batmobile.
How did you get every single one of those wrong?
I try, man. This is rigged. This thing is rigged.